Welcome back. Hopefully you just watched our role-playing video. We are going to talk through some of the techniques that Kate used masterfully as the mom in this scenario, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's important. So a big thing that happened here was the groundwork. So there was reference made to something that was done beforehand. So this is not the time to teach a new strategy, it's a time to review. So the groundwork that you lay down beforehand of talking about what you can do and teaching different strategies is so important. And you made a really good point about you might not always remember them each time.
Yeah, absolutely. So right away when you walked in, the first thing that I wanted to do was make sure that it was okay for me to reference some of those things. Because if you would have walked in and been like crying, tearful, very angry, like something where we couldn't sit down and have a talk like this, that might not be the best time to be able to recall things.
Totally.
Just like we had talked about before, when you're very angry or upset, it's difficult to express emotions, and it's also difficult to recall things.
Yes, and that's on a level higher than we can even understand, because our fight or flight is then engaged when we're in those kind of tantrum places. We're in that protect, and that's why we see a lot of those postures, which the posture. So that was the other big thing, came right in.
Very closed off. If you're sitting in your own home, we are still trying, obviously, to maintain distance between each other. If I were, chatting in a more comfortable fashion, I would have a little bit more of an open body stance. I would probably be cross-legged, but I would be out of frame if I display that right now.
Yes, you would.
But just keeping that open language, because I'm modeling something that I would like to have the other recipient see. So if I'm closed off, if my body language is sitting like this, okay, then I'm just gonna further get that in return. So whatever kind of physical response you would like to see, you need to make sure that you are modeling it as well.
And the whole time, Kate was nodding or adding in little comments, but not derailing the conversation either. So that's our active listening that we were talking about too.
Absolutely.
When I say we were talking, when we reviewed our video.
Yes, when we reviewed. We had to remember. But yeah, those active listening skills, nodding, yep, absolutely. Like those encouraging words, those are not providing interruptions. Those are a little bit more of a motivational interviewing technique where I'm just encouraging those thoughts to keep coming. We do have to be careful with using some of those, because if that conversation would have gotten maybe more tearful, or I noticed her breathing was starting to increase, and she was having a hard time talking about her feelings and how that mask made her feel, that would be a good time for me to step in and be like, hey, like, it's okay. Like, we can go ahead and we can reframe or redirect that conversation to do a little bit of management so things don't escalate to the point where you're overworked or over upset.
And that really is just being in tune. Your child, and watching their body language is so important. So you have to kind of gauge as you go, see where you need to go as the conversation continues. Notice if they're starting to ramp up. So the way that Kate opened as my mom, how lucky would I be? And I sat down right away. She asked that open-ended question that we had reviewed in our other video. So she opened with that question. She showed me physically that she was there and supportive. There was also a really nice thing that happened where she left space. So there were moments where I was just talking, and that was fine. And that's pretty normal, the kind of disjointed feeling, like separate thoughts that kind of seem random.
They're stream of consciousness.
Yeah, which is very kindergarten.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is totally okay to let that happen. Like we touched on before, just make sure that it is not escalating to a point where the child is becoming overworked or in distress. It is probably going to hurt your heart a little bit. Okay. As I am going to guess as a parent, just as somebody too who's empathetic, like it hurts just know that it is okay for that silence to happen because that fosters more communication and conversation.
Yeah, and knowing too, if your child is someone who needs to snuggle up to you for that conversation, or if they do need that space away.
Absolutely. We can't really model that right now.
We can't.
But you are more, it's great if your child does need some of that touch, to be able to reach out and touch them, hold their hand, snuggle up. If you use a weighted blanket, that might be something else to utilize as a great therapeutic technique.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off. I
No,
just
you're
love
fine.
weighted blankets.
They're awesome.
And that takes away the need for physical touch. It's something that they have control over. They can then pull it on themselves.
They
That's
have that
really nice.
autonomy. Yeah.
Yes. Consent, autonomy, all of these things that we can then offer to our children by giving them options. So we also had a moment where that recall brought up the new emotions. So
Yes, yeah. Being able to recall, I think it was with tag, right? We were talking about.
Very upset about tag.
Yes, and knowing too, like, what your child is going to be missing about school, just having those conversations ahead of time, like we've kind of been talking about before. I noticed how upset she was about tag, so validating that, and really saying, like, it is okay to be upset about that. And being able to see also, okay, well, that led to a whole other basis of conversation, so we can recall what we've learned and put that plan into play. That also shows that there is that sense of, oh yeah, I have done this before, I can do this again.
Empowerment.
Yeah, exactly. Empowerment, confidence, all of those things. So really encouraging the fact that that is a smart and good thing to do, that you're proud that they did the right thing, that they're thinking the right things, that they can do this again the next day.
And you could see, even with the first strategy that was brought forward, you could see the body language change. And you'll hopefully be noticing that too in your own child, that you can see that just confidence. And when someone's telling you, I understand, I see you and I hear you, that in itself can be just all they need. And in general, a lot of the things that I was mentioning are relevant to anybody going into school for the first time. There's a lot of changes. Obviously, there are some new topics that we brought up that are new to this school year, but a lot of them, not being able to play tag, maybe you couldn't really play as much as you wanted to, because kindergarten's a little different than daycare, or maybe you've never engaged in a situation where it was not your family, so following the rules, all of those things can be challenging, and that's so normal. So these strategies, again, are not just for now.
Yes, absolutely.
It was really good. I think the other thing that was really important was that two things. When you validated and you found that tag meant the most to me, you said something about it, and then summarized. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Summarization is a wonderful skill to use as like a checkout listening tool, right? So sometimes when we're listening, we might get things wrong, and that's okay. But if we summarize what we've heard back, that gives an opportunity to say, yeah, like that is exactly right, or and that just gives another opportunity to be like, okay, let's try that again. Can you tell me again, or can you tell me more about that? It's also another tool to say like, okay, I was listening to you. Did I get that right? Okay, good. It feels really nice to be heard.
It does. And there are going to be times, especially with your younger kiddos, where, no, I'm not mad about tag, could totally send them into another spiral. So you just, sometimes those tantrums are for no reason, and you can't explain it, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That might be a good time to have a break. Have some water, have a snack, take some space, use your skills that you've learned. That's a perfect time to do that.
Totally. And we also, I think the other piece was that you then added in kind of a, I understand, it sounds like you had a hard day. So then you're helping to label for me then to understand, like, yeah, that was a really hard day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I get it wrong, if I'm not interpreting that correctly, that's another opportunity to give another feeling or emotion word, that opens up more conversation.
And in general, everything can be used together or separately. So any of these techniques you can use at any point, but these are just a way to show you it all together.
Yes.
You might not get as long of a conversation either out of your kiddo, especially after school when they're tired. They've gone through a whole day and that's exhausting. So this is just a way for you to see kind of some of them in action.
Yeah.
We talked about the nonverbal and modeling. That prep work is so important. The recall and the continual bring back really of Doc McStuffins. We talked about it before. She knew I liked Doc McStuffins. She referred to a game that we played that helps me to understand wearing masks. So again, it's that groundwork that was laid. And then I kept referencing Doc McStuffins as a result.
Right.
So calming character really that I identified with. Like, okay, if Doc McStuffins can wear it, so can I.
Exactly. And to have like that like grounding cornerstone character, like whatever you choose to call it, that is such a great way to bring it back and be like, all right, again, you can do this. You're good at this. Doc McStuffins would be proud.
Yes.
All of those validation things are wonderful.
And it makes it on their level so that they can understand.
Yes, absolutely. You have to do that.
Making sure we get all of our points.
We did do a lot.
We did a lot of things. And again, you probably don't need to do all of them in the same. I think the body, the support, the validation, sometimes you're not going to be able to get in the questions. That's okay, as long as you continue to convey your support in other ways.
Absolutely.
Let's see. The next thing that was really cool was that there was the immediate use of a strategy. So something that I had learned before, we had that recall, and I want to talk a little bit about touch. Right now it's going to be a little bit different for sure about getting the touch that we need, but that can be so calming because it helps us to know where our body is in space. So if you think about when you're upset, if you put on a sweatshirt or go under your comforters, you're getting that nice pressure to your joints that helps you to then feel calm. For me, I like hugs. I need hugs. And that is another way for me to get pressure, to find where I am. Because it's a grounding technique. It's a reminder that I am here and I'm okay. And so that immediate strategy, she could use it anywhere. And if she didn't remember that particular strategy, she could have cued another one.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you can see now, but like my thumb is on my hand right here. I'm giving myself a little bit of pressure. Just, it feels subconscious, but this is a grounding technique for myself. I also have my right foot on top of my left right now. So I'm pulling myself down into the ground, and it's just keeping my bodily awareness kind of in check. And that is, you know, all these things are just comfort measures and look different for everybody.
And that is so important too. It looks different for everyone. So one strategy works for one kid, it might not work for your other child. So you have to kind of see with each kid what's their strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And what yours is too. If you are not in a space where you can have a million little fingers kind of pulling and grabbing on you, that is important to note too, because if you have been with someone, a little one, all day long, and you need some space, remember that before you check in with your kiddos who are coming home from school, and take that time to decompress and to make sure that you've got just a quick minute for a quick breath, check in with yourself.
Yeah. It's so important. I mean, if you're off, then your child's off already. They're going to pick up on that and show you that. Just like we were talking about with modeling, you get what you show. So, and that's in everything. And again, you're not always going to be perfect, and that's totally fine and expected. But if you can show more often than not that you're using a strategy or that you're trying, I really think that that's the most important thing.
Yep. So do those techniques like we were doing with your kid. Show them that they're helpful for you too, if they are helpful. And being able to say, yeah, that does feel good. Sometimes when I get worried, I do this too.
And then that's validating.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strategy with validation. We love it.
Yes.
We love it.
Yes, all of that is wonderful.
So many good things. Then there was a reminder. So there was a check-in, a skills check. And I think that you explained that really nicely. So toss it over.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we were checking in with something that we had talked about the night before,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
The plan.
Yes, the plan for the night before with
Distance.
the distance. Yes, I can't remember if it's hand washing the distance. So being able to make sure that what you have maybe talked about the night before in preparation during that teaching and that groundwork phase,
Mhm.
seeing if that landed. Okay, so if that didn't land, if the kiddo is like, nope, don't remember, or there's met with like anger or another emotion, and again, like you see that escalating, that's okay. Now is not the time to
Mhm.
go back and teach that. That
No.
might be another time, again, for a break.
Mhm.
Don't stress it. It does not mean that you did something wrong. Does
No.
not mean that they did something wrong. They might just be so saturated at that point.
Totally.
Like we all get at the end of a very long day.
Oh yeah.
That that's a good sign to watch out for and be like, all right, we have to take a little bit of a break. Then you can go back and reassess and see how and when would be a better time to look at that point again.
It's perfect. And I think the other bit is, again, with the younger kiddos, sometimes it is helpful to give an option. Like, hey, I remembered you liked squeezes and you liked deep breaths. Did you want to do one of those now? And then you have this nonverbal communication. And if they're unable to really talk to you at that point, they can point to the hand, like, okay, deep breathing, let's do that together.
Mhm.
And then you can walk it through. So if you're reading that they're not coming up with anything, you can give them the choice. So that first option, she did, me, did come up with that.
Mhm.
Me did come up. That's okay. I did have an idea, I came forward with it, and we used it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think in general, the main thing here is that you're thinking about your nonverbal as much as what you're putting out there, and that you're providing support, that you're asking questions, and all of that was time that your child then knows, okay, there's time for me, there's space for me, and you might not always be able to provide that. If you can say, hey, I can see you're upset, we have to go do XYZ, I would really like to talk to you about this later. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes. Is that okay is such a good thing to say because you're giving a choice or an option. Be prepared if they say no.
If
That's
they
not
say-
okay?
Yeah, if they say no, you kind of have to address it. That's the only problem asking but it's so important to give that power. And
Yes.
to say, like, you know, I see this, and it's your call.
What would you like to do? Giving a choice.
Any option that you offer, you have to be able to give. That's the other thing that has to be the character.
Yes, for sure.
And I think the final point is that there was a big change in body language. So towards the end, initially it was closed and in and down and curved. And at the end, it was more excited. I was happier. We had this good discussion, this good tool. So it was really something that was beneficial for both of us because it helped our relationship further. And again, we probably would have ended that with a hug if we were allowed to do so.
Right, absolutely. And instead, we use the term "I love you." You did a good job. I'm very proud of you today for everything that you have learned. So being able to reaffirm again, and whatever, if you have like a sweet phrase that you like to use with your kids that helps them feel connected, is a great way to end that conversation as well.
So, I hope that you learned something from our videos that will be posted. And if you have questions, you can always comment. You can message if you have a more private question, and I will be here for you. I can direct some questions over to Kate if they're more for her, and we are happy to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, what we are going to do is post some of these skills as well, so
Yes.
you can have them in a printed format for you to be able to refer back to.
Okay, so until next time, thanks for coming.
Bye.